Hi, welcome to First Chapter Friday. Our story today is one that has been so popular at school, I haven't even read it yet. So you're going to get my fresh interpretation of it, and it is going to be a prelude and then a first chapter. Kind of a bit of a length, but you can handle it. Just listening. And the book is Last Day on Mars, and it's by Emerson. Regional Galactic Manager's Office, 8th Sector, Spiral Galaxy 93, Galactic Supercluster 714. Many hundreds of light years from the solar system that you call home, inside a spindly crystal structure floating at the edge of a great nebula shaped like an eye, a yellow light began to blink. The light was located on a map, or something like a map. Picture a regular map spread out on a table, only now picture it bleeding up and down through the air, and also forward and backward in time. Like a map of your neighborhood, but also of Tuesday, and next week, and 100 years ago. Let's just call it a map. This map was in an office, not exactly an office either, but close enough, and its blinking caught the attention of a nearby being. She was known as a chronologist, and she was as similar to a human being as her map was to a human map, and her office to a human office. If you picture her having dark blue, somewhat translucent skin, and wearing black robes, that will be fine for the moment. The chronologist tapped the blinking yellow light and read the data that appeared. It was data about a star. She stepped into the middle of the map and spun it this way and that around her, checking the data from 4 other lights that were blinking in her sector. These lights also indicated stars, only they were red. She pressed forward briefly in time, and that yellow light changed to red too. Red was a problem. The chronologist reached into her pocket and gripped a tiny orange crystal, perfectly round and about the size of a human golf ball. With it, she sent a thought message to the other regional galactic managers. In turn, she received instructions. Establish monitors. Add your findings to the inquiry. She zoomed in on the yellow light, studied its surroundings, and picked a place that seemed suitable to put in an observatory. Then she had lunch. After lunch, the chronologist traveled 700 light years to the location she'd chosen. There's no way to easily explain to you how she instantaneously made a journey that would have taken a human nearly 7,000 years to complete, nor is there any way that you could truly comprehend the chronologist's intricate relationship with the 4th dimension. And that's nothing to feel bad about. Here's the thing. The universe that you live in is really, really big. So big that most of the intelligent beings in it have had to make peace with how much they will never see and never understand. And yet that's only the beginning. Put it this way. If reality was a blueberry pie, this universe would be just one single blueberry. And while someone like the chronologist can see this whole blueberry, as well as all the blueberries around it, the gooey filling in between, the flaky crust, and even that this pie is in an aluminum tin, sitting on a shelf by a window in the row of other pies, you are so small and so far inside your own blueberry that you can't even tell it is a berry in the first place. Most of the time, this lack of understanding isn't really a problem, After all, you are very busy. So much homework to do, food to eat, games to play. And often, when you do actually stumble into thinking about how big the world really is, it just gets you down. Because what's the point of going to school or playing outside or anything really if we're just insignificant little beings in one lonely corner of a vast and uncaring universe? That kind of thinking really doesn't do you any good. But then there are those other times, aren't there? Those rare moments when the stars twinkle just so, when the wind rustles the leaves just right, and you have that tingling sensation that even though the world is so very big and you are only one infinitesimal part of it, you are also connected to something greater. Somewhere out there, beyond the moon and the black of space, something so grand, a pie crust even. Sure enough, though, just when you feel like you might actually be able to comprehend it, something always comes along and distracts you. A car horn, an errant frisbee, a meddlesome younger brother, and that knowledge, that awareness, it just slips from your grasp. For most intelligent beings, that fleeting feeling can be enough to give you peace of mind. If you could speak to that chronologist, and there's almost no way that you could, she would tell you that you're lucky, because there are some intelligent beings who react differently to the same experience. They decide that they must know more, must try to go farther, no matter what the cost. That reaction, the chronologist would tell you, can lead to all sorts of problems. The chronologist arrived at her destination and found herself standing on a field of cooling lava. It glimmered like a frozen sea in brilliant yellow starlight. She checked her silver watch. She was a bit early, but like any good scientist, she wanted to get some context, given the events that were to come. She spun a dial around the watch's face, and time began to pass rapidly. Days and nights raced by, then years, decades, millennia. It rained in flashes, the lava cracked, and the plants shot out of the gaps. In the distance, mountains grew. A jungle sprouted up around her. Life forms crawled about, developing legs, scales, feathers, and wings. The jungle became a savanna, and then a desert, then a jungle again. Briefly, she was under a teal-colored sea. The creatures around her kept changing and eventually settled on an amazing design, full of great promise. They ruled the planet with grace and harmony for 1,000 generations. One day, they even looked to the stars, just beginning to ponder their significance, to wonder what was this universe around them. Wait, was that a blueberry? Unfortunately, it was an asteroid. In a flash, those great, fearsome creatures were gone. The chronologist felt a slight pang of remorse, but only for a moment. After all, these things happen. There wasn't much to see for a while after that. Continents crawled along, ice fought with oceans back and forth, and then two-legged beings began to appear. They were amusing, very industrious, called themselves humans. They named the planet Earth, and their star, Sun. They sped around the chronologist on wheels and rails and through the air with propellers and jets. They built dwellings and great buildings and even primitive spaceships. They were a bit irresponsible, not ones to pick up after themselves, so to speak, but all in all, they did okay. Too bad for them, things were about to change. The chronologist touched a glowing symbol on her watch. She stopped it in the century year of 13,405,007,682. These humans called it 2175. They were kind of adorable. She produced an orange crystal from her pocket, held it up to the sun, and started recording data. And then it happened. The sun changed, though not in any visible way yet. The chronologist checked her readings and realized that this planet would not be suitable for her observatory after all. Her monitors would need more time this planet didn't have. She looked around her. These humans had no idea what was coming. Briefly, she considered revealing herself and explaining the situation, but such interference was strictly forbidden. Other chronologists had tried making contact with reasonably intelligent beings in the past, and had never gone well. They were always being mistaken for gods, or getting attacked, or, in one unfortunate case, driving an entire civilization crazy. The humans would have to figure it out on their own. In the meantime, the chronologist traveled to the fourth planet of this solar system and found the highest spot on its red surface, a rocky spire at the top of a giant extinct volcano, about 25 kilometers high. The planet had a very thin atmosphere, perfect for her sensors, and it was pleasantly desolate, except for one small human colony. But that was thousands of kilometers away. Still, after she installed her observatory, using an instantaneous process of matter replacement that again would be nearly impossible to explain, she also sprang for a cloaking system, even though it was the end of the fiscal quarter, just in case those humans ever came snooping around. Inside, she activated many instruments that were positioned on a shelf ringing the circular room. Graphics fluttered to life around her. She calibrated the sensors on a long black object pointing up through the roof that resembled a telescope, and then she sped up her watch and observed the readings to make sure that everything was running smoothly. The instruments were humming and whirring. The graphics flickered and morphed. One large image showed the sun in the rusty sky. Soon it began to grow, just like those other stars in her sector had. Before long, it would explode into a supernova, another star dying out, another yellow light blinking to red on the map back in her office. And while, yes, things like supernovas happened all the time in this universe, they weren't supposed to happen to these types of stars, and they definitely weren't supposed to happen this fast. Something else was at work here, something that was putting her entire sector, and quite possibly the entire universe, at risk. The growing sun filled more and more of the sky, turning from yellow to orange to red. As the chronologist observed the data, something caught her eye. Her silver watch had started blinking blue around the edges. Blue was a problem, one that she'd sensed coming for a long time. "Beautiful, isn't it?" The voice came from behind her. The chronologist turned to discover a blurry image of a two-legged being. A white sting of energy shot through her. She crumpled to the ground, her vision filled with dancing bolts of electricity. As she fell, she managed to slip the orange crystal from her pocket and roll it toward the wall, where it settled in the shadow beneath a shelf. "I'm sorry to have to do this," said the figure, his voice clipped by static. "Really, I am." The chronologist felt her body beginning to numb. She concentrated as best she could and sent a thought message to the orange crystal. The figure was dressed in a heavy black metallic suit threaded with glowing gold wires and wore a helmet with a lavender visor. He flickered almost a projection, an effect the chronologist recognized as space-time warping. "I'm just afraid you won't understand what we're after," said the figure. "It's never been your way to ponder the oldest question." The chronologist knew of no oldest question. The idea seemed sort of silly, and maybe not that silly, because here she was dying for it. As the final moment of her long life passed, the chronologist peered at the figure. "You want to know who I am," he said. He raised the reflective visor of his helmet. When the chronologist realized who she was looking at, she felt something like relief. Maybe it was for the best that she would not live to see what would surely be the end, far too soon, of this universe that she had called home. The figure watched the chronologist until the white spark stopped firing. Always sad to have to do this kind of thing, but necessary. "Sir," a voice said in his earpiece, "we have a report from Sector 14. The figure tapped a screen on his forearm. A view of space appeared, and a fresh supernova bloomed in reds and violets. The explosion formed a shape like a hand. "Success!" said the figure. He smiled and raised his own hand, mimicking the supernova's shape. "The grand design. I am coming," he whispered. There was a flash on one of the observatory graphics. It showed a panoramic view of the Martian landscape. The figure saw fleets of ships landing in the distance. It was still fascinating to watch time pass this quickly. In what seemed like moments, more ships arrived, and a dome arced across the horizon. Buildings sprouted up inside. If only they knew. "Sir, power's running low. We need you to get back." Fine, the figure replied. "I'm ready." He dissolved out of sight, leaving the observatory atop the volcano, silent and still. Years passed. The monitoring equipment kept recording. In the skies overhead, more and more human ships arrived, and the sun kept growing. Meanwhile, in a recess at the base of a wall, the tiny crystal sphere blinked, a small light in a darkening world. Good evening. As you all know, for the past 4 years we have been documenting extremely unusual activity in the sun. Increased radiation and solar flares have wreaked havoc on daily life. The best minds in the world have studied this data around the clock, and tonight I can report that while we still do not know the cause, our conclusion is unanimous. The sun is expanding, and we are all in grave danger. Now, we've always known that Earth would not be humanity's home forever. Our sun was classified as a main sequence star, which means that someday, billions of years from now, it would begin running out of energy. When that day came, the sun would expand into a red giant, swallowing Earth and the inner planets of the solar system, before dying down to a white dwarf. We've also known that long before then, humanity's rapid population growth would require us to begin moving outward across the galaxy. When we established our first colonies on the Moon and Mars, nearly 50 years ago, we thought they were our first steps on a long, gradual journey. Unfortunately, the need for that journey has come far sooner than we would have ever imagined. Our data shows that not only is the sun expanding now, but it will become a red supergiant, and soon after that, it will explode into a supernova. Nothing in this solar system will survive. Worse, we predict that this will happen in 40 years, maybe even less. We've never seen a star behave like this before, and so I cannot be more clear. We must leave. And we must do so immediately, or our species faces certain extinction. Now, though our situation is dire, it is not without hope. As I speak to you tonight, leaders from every nation around the world have pledged their help to save humanity. Together, we will build a fleet of ships to carry us to safety. The Phoenix Starliners. These giant interstellar transports will be constructed above Mars. That will buy us precious extra years to complete the construction after Earth has become uninhabitable. Over the next few years, we will begin to ferry all of humanity from Earth to temporary Martian colonies, where we will need every citizen's help to build the Starliners. Life on Mars won't be easy, but it will give us a fighting chance. And before long, everyone will be aboard a Starliner and out of harm's way, hopefully with time to spare. But then the question becomes, where will we go? Tonight I can also report that after surveying millions of potential planets, we found one. Located in the Cygnus arm of our own Milky Way galaxy, the planet designated Aru 5 appears to have the right gravity and distance from its star to sustain human life, and it is just close enough that we should be able to make it. We have already begun colonization phase 1, which involves gathering advanced data about the Aru and planning the planet for our arrival. Phase 2 will be to develop a terraforming system that we can use once we arrive to ensure an Earth-like habitat. Phase 3 will of course be getting there. We are currently designing rockets that will allow us to travel faster than we ever have. But the journey to Aru will still take us nearly 150 years to complete. I know that sounds incredibly long, but our advancements in stasis technology should make the trip feel like only a few months. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, this is the most serious threat our species has ever faced. But though the challenge is great and our future uncertain, I know that humanity will do whatever it takes to survive. Chapter 1. Earth Year 2213. Time to redline 24 hours 39 minutes. The great ships streaked away from the red planet like shooting stars. 1, 10, hundreds they went, their fusion rockets burning, solar sails unfurling, their hulls vibrating with millions of sighs of relief. Some of the passengers looked back at the angry ball of fire they were fleeing. Some even held up small, powerful telescopes in search for one last glimpse of the charred ember that had once been their blue home. Others kept their backs to the traitorous sun, instead gazing hopefully into the starry dark, while still others played games and tried to enjoy themselves for the first time in far too long. For years and years the ships hurtled away, each fleet leaving fewer lights behind. One by one the enormous docks orbiting Mars stopped blinking. The space elevators stopped flashing. One by one the shimmering colony domes winked off. The endless Martian wind gathered their trash into whirling clouds and coated their windows with rust-colored dust, one by one, until there was only one ship remaining, one little colony glimmering, one last collection of humans with one last day to go. On the only planet next to the only planet they had ever called home. Even on the last day on Mars, there was still important work to be done, unless you were stuck at school. "So," said Miss Avey, "I guess we'll take a vote. Raise your hand if you want to watch survey of former Earth continents and nations." No hands. "And raise your hand for the Starliner Orientation Guide." 18 half-hearted hands raised from the back of the room. The last year 10 students, 13 Earth years old, or if you wanted to annoy your parents, you could say you were almost 7 in Martian years. Not long ago, the classroom had been packed with 50 kids, and there had been 10 other year 10 classes in school. But everyone else had already moved up to the Starliner Scorpius, which awaited them in orbit. "Isn't there anything else we can watch?" asked Sean Williams. Miss Avey just sighed, ran her fingers through her short black hair, and continued tapping at her screen-top podium. "Not without the VertCom," said Liam Saunders-Chang, who was sitting beside Sean. "Why did they have to shut it all down?" said Sean. "What are we supposed to do after school if we can't log into the arcades or the mall?" "All non-essential systems have been turned off to save power for the dome," said Ms. Avey. "The Scorpius has its own VertCom. I'm sure you can survive one more day." "Maybe," said Sean. He looked at Liam and rolled his eyes. Liam shrugged. "Could you just please show your best effort and watch this video?" said Ms. Avey. "We have 1 hour of school left, and believe me, you're not the only one who doesn't want to be here." For Liam and surely for everyone else, the day had dragged on and on. After a seemingly endless algebra review, they tried to have a last day party, but without access to their VertCom accounts, the only music they had was what Ms. Avey kept on her personal link, mostly stuff that Liam's parents listened to. And the only snacks they could find were plain-flavored Nutri-Bars and synthetic lime pudding, 2 foods that everyone was going to be glad to leave behind forever. After that, Ms. Avey had made them clean out their desks and wash the tops, even though no one was ever going to use them again. These desks would be just sitting here, perfectly clean, until the planet melted. Liam glanced out the round classroom windows. The black buildings of the colony glinted in copper sunlight. There was one gap where you could just see a glimpse of the colony dome, and through a haze of distance, the barren red mountains beyond. Liam had spent hours gazing that way, wishing he were out there rather than in here. Strange to think that this was the last day he would think that. Soon there would be no view of buildings, no mountains. Out the Starliner windows there would be no solid ground at all. The thought made him shudder. "Okay, here we go," said Ms. Avey. "Please put on your headsets." Liam sat up. He picked up the only thing left on his desk, a thin, clear pair of virtual glasses with silver earphones dangling from the frames. He slipped them on and pushed the phones into his ears. His view of the classroom shimmered and was replaced by a wide image of the giant Starliner floating in space. A friendly voice announced, "Welcome to the official orientation guide to the—" The image dissolved. The classroom lights blinked out. They were left sitting in the rusty orange light coming through the windows. An alarm began to blare. "Aw, man," said Sean. "Attention, all classes," said the principal over the speaker. "The solar system is arriving ahead of schedule. Please make your way to the shelter as quickly as possible." "You heard her, students," said Ms. Avey, moving to the door. Liam's stomach tightened as he put down the glasses and stood. He brushed his black, shaggy hair out of his eyes and rubbed the back of his neck. His tongue felt dry, his jaw tight. As they shuffled into line, he worked on his breathing. Slow, one breath, then the other, then the next. They filed out into the dim hallway, their heavy grav boots clomping. The wall screens that normally showed student-made art and videos were dark. Thin beams of daylight slanted across the hall from the narrow windows in the classroom doors. Up ahead, a single green light flashed above the staircase that led down to the shelter. "Where's Phoebe?" Sean asked over Liam's shoulder. Liam looked up and down the hall. No idea. When did they ever know where Phoebe was? She said she was going to the bathroom. That was like 10 minutes ago, said Sean. Ugh, I told my dad to let me stay home today. At least you get to go up to the Starliner tonight. I'm here until the very last elevator trip tomorrow. That stinks. Our parents could have at least let us come to the station today. It's pointless being here. Yeah, Liam agreed, though when he had woken up this morning, he'd actually felt the opposite, glad for one last chance to see his school and neighborhood and classmates. But the long, boring day, and now the idea of having to sit in the cramped, dark shelter beneath their school, had soured that feeling. Liam's parents and Sean's dad worked out at the Phase 2 research station. They were there right now, frantically trying to perfect the terraforming system that they would use on Aru 5. The project had been on schedule to finish 6 months from now, but the solar storms had been getting worse, growing larger and occurring more frequently than predicted. Each one peeled away a little bit more of Mars's thin atmosphere, which meant the colony's life support system had to work that much harder. Plus, the electromagnetic radiation from the storms was frying circuits and knocking out power more and more often. Things were even more dire up on the Scorpius. Without the protection of the meager Martian atmosphere, the ship had to activate its radiation shielding during every solar storm. Using the shields meant using fuel that was supposed to be used for getting to Aru 5. They were trying to hold out for as long as possible, to finish the Phase 2 trials, but the Scorpius didn't have much fuel left to spare for its shields, and the colony's power systems wouldn't last much longer. That's why the red line, the time at which the colony had to be shut down and the Scorpius had to begin its journey, had been pushed up. And pushed up again. And now, suddenly it seemed, it was tomorrow. Liam had set a timer on his watch, counting down. They were officially under one Martian-length day now, which was 24 hours and 39 minutes. There was a sizzling sound and a series of loud clangs. "Watch your step, everyone!" Ms. Avey called. Liam felt a subtle lightening as the artificial gravity failed. Mars's native gravity was only about 1/3 as strong as Earth's, so all the colony floors and streets were wired to make magnetic field that brought the gravity up to Earth level. Everyone wore specially lined clothing and boots that reacted with the field, standard issue black shirts and pants that had been handed down at least 3 times, and by this point were made more of patches than the original fabric. Most of the soft lining was gone from the insides of Liam's boots, and they were too tight and giving him blisters. But Liam actually preferred when the gravity system failed. Earth's gravity made him feel like he was covered in heavy blankets all the time. Whenever he was out at the research station, which didn't have artificial gravity, he could jump farther and climb more easily. like a stronger, faster version of himself. His parents complained that the Martian gravity gave them headaches and joint pains, but Liam and Sean never felt that way. Maybe because they'd been born here. It didn't seem to bother any of the other kids in the colony either. The only problem with these gravity failures was when they happened unexpectedly while you were using the bathroom, or, like now, walking in line. Liam had learned to take small steps these last few months and keep a steadying hand on the wall at all times. But this latest outage still caught him mid-stride, and he bumped right into Nita, the girl in front of him. "Ow! Watch it!" She elbowed him in the ribs. "Sorry." A new beeping joined the cacophony of alarms and voices, a high-pitched chirping tone coming from the slim link pads that they each wore on their wrists. A yellow light flashed there, a radiation warning. "Great," said Sean. "We're gonna get fried." "Faster, everyone!" Ms. Avey called. They were all bunched together as they waited for the younger kids to file down the stairs into the shelter. "Hey, guys!" The whisper came from across the hall. Liam looked over his shoulder and spied a silhouette peering out from a doorway. "Come on!" Phoebe hissed, motioning to the two of them. Liam craned his neck, and when he saw that Ms. Avey's attention was on the stairs, he bolted across the hall in 2 bounding steps. "Aw, man!" Sean groaned, but Liam heard him following. Phoebe flashed a smile and slipped back through a metal door and into a stairwell. "We're supposed to go to the shelter," Liam said, as Phoebe shut the door behind them. "Of course we are," she said. Phoebe was taller than the both of them, with bright green eyes and long hair dyed pale red. "Or," she grabbed Liam by the chest. "Or," she jabbed Liam in the chest, "now would be the perfect opportunity to go get that Dust Devils jersey I know you want." She poked him right on the ink stamp for the Haishang Dust Devils, Liam's favorite gravball team. Since they were the last ones who had to wear the gravity-assisting clothing, they'd been allowed to decorate it. Phoebe had the logo of her favorite team, too, the Meridian Canyon Bombers. Sean wasn't into gravball, but he had the logo for his favorite band, the Gravity Minus. "How exactly are we going to get one of those?" asked Liam. "We'll just go grab one at the stadium store." Phoebe paused to cough. She wore an Atmo pack at all times to help with her breathing. Small tubes led from her nostrils to a slender silver backpack that converted CO2 to oxygen. "That whole part of the colony is shut down." "We can't just steal a shirt," said Liam. Phoebe rolled her eyes. "It's not stealing if it's left behind. Everything around here is completely abandoned. It's a ghost town. Nobody's going to care." Ms. Avey will care if we run off," said Sean. "No, she won't," said Phoebe. "She'll be just as glad to be rid of us." "What if she calls our parents?" said Liam. "Do you really think Mrs. Avey would go through the trouble of calling the research station? She knows they're busy anyway." "But if she does," said Phoebe, mimicking him. "Our parents will probably be down to the turbines, running trials, so they won't get the call anyway. And even if they do, we'll be fine. They know we can take care of ourselves." Liam pursed his lips. It was pointless trying to argue with Phoebe. Ever since she and her family had moved here 3 years ago, when the colonies were consolidating, Phoebe and Liam and Sean had spent most of their weekends together at the research station. When Phoebe set her mind to something, there was almost no way to talk her out of it. Liam peered back through the narrow window in the door. Their classmates were starting down the stairs. He'd wanted an official Dust Devils jersey forever, but they always cost more than he had from his allowance. His parents said they wanted to get him one as a leaving present, but they were always too busy with work. Then, when the stadium store had its going out of existence sale a couple weekends ago, Liam had been stuck at the research station. And now that they were sold out in the VertCom, and there was never any time to stop by the store after school because he and his older sister Mina were in charge of packing up not only their own rooms but their entire apartment, as well as making dinner and cleaning up since Mom and Dad were getting home so late each night. And now the shop would be abandoned. The few remaining jerseys just left there to burn. But still. "Why do you really want to go?" Liam asked. "Because, duh, Liam, you've been whining about how much you want one of those shirts for a month. When will you ever have another chance to get one?" "Phoebe," said Liam. She broke into a grin. "Okay, and I also want to watch the storm come in from up on Vista." "You want to go to Vista for the solar storm?" said Sean. "We'll get fried up there." "No, we won't," said Phoebe. "We can duck inside when the storm actually arrives. And anyway, one dose of radiation isn't that big a deal. Everybody's just being cautious." "And that's a bad thing," said Liam. "The storms are bigger now," added Sean. "Come on," said Phoebe. "People say the storms are beautiful, that they light up the dome with all these amazing colors, like the aurora supposedly did back on Earth. But we are always stuck in some kind of shelter, and this is our very last chance to see one. Doesn't it sound really amazing?" "Not really," said Sean. "Kinda," Liam thought. His heart was racing, his breath small and quick, and he kept picturing that maroon and gold jersey. They were taking so little up to the Scorpius. You were only allowed what you could fit into a single regulation-sized container. It had been taking Liam forever to choose which of his possessions to bring and which to leave behind. He checked the hall again. The last kids were going down the stairs, Ms. Avey right behind them. Maybe she hadn't even noticed they were gone yet. Maybe she wouldn't really care, like Phoebe said. "Tick-tock," said Phoebe. She checked her link. "We've got 10 minutes till that storm arrives. Running in Mars gravity, I bet we can make it to Vista in 5. But we've got to go." "We should go to the shelter," said Sean. "Ugh, Sean," Phoebe snapped. "I am sick of you. Always—" She doubled over, coughing and clutching her chest. "You okay?" Liam asked. Phoebe had Martian cough. Some doctors thought it was caused by the fine toxic dust that the colony's air filters couldn't entirely remove. Others thought it was a reaction to the artificial environment. Like with the gravity, even if you simulated Earth conditions nearly perfectly, it still wasn't Earth. Phoebe stood, breathing deep. "I'm fine." Liam made a slight motion to his nose. One of Phoebe's nostril plugs had come out. "Thanks," she said quietly, replacing the plug. Then she turned and started down the short flight of metal stairs that led to an exit door. "Phoebe," said Liam, "it's our last day. Let's make it count." Liam held his breath. Sean was right, but Phoebe was too. It was their last day here ever, and he had already spent half of it in school doing nothing. By this time tomorrow, he'd be on his way up to the Starliner. No more Hashang Colony, no more Dust Devil games, even these stupid solar storms. He'd never see any of it again. "I'm gonna go," he said to Sean. "Sorry." And he leaped down the staircase. "Ugh," said Sean, and followed him. Phoebe pushed open the door, and they sprinted out into the blood-red afternoon. Well, I'm glad I kept reading, even though it was very long, because I needed to have some younger student peoples in the book to keep me interested. Just saying. So, hopefully, it was enough to keep you interested too. I will finish this book and I'll have to get back to what I thought of it. But maybe we can read it together and you can comment on what you think. Hope you have a great week. Take care now.